Fusion Farms, the day before Hurricane Fiona, the day of Hurricane Fiona, and the day after Hurricane Fiona, we were operating uninterrupted.
Welcome to the Hitech Farmer show.
Hi, Sebastian. Kendell Lang here. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
If you wanna introduce yourself just for the viewers.
Yeah, sure. My name is Kendell Lang. I'm the CEO of Fusion Farms. We are a Puerto Rico-based vertical aquaponics water farm. So we are excited to be providing food security solutions right now for the island of Puerto Rico and soon to be many other locations around the world.
Okay, so right off the bat, what is aquaponics?
So aquaponics, if you're familiar with hydroponics, hydroponics is the growing of produce in water, and aquaculture is the growing of fish in a controlled environment, and aquaponics is the combination of those two. So it's the combination of hydroponics with fish. So we're actually growing in an aquaponics closed loop system that we have tilapia as the fish, which are the nutrient source, where they produce ammonia through their gills and through their waste, and that ammonia through the natural nitrification process creates the nutrients that are then absorbed as nitrites and nitrates by the plants. The plants clean the water, get the nutrients, and that water is then circulated back as clean water to the fish. So it's a virtuous system that replicates what you would find in Mother Nature by any lake or pond or stream. So it mimics all the beautiful things of Mother Nature, but it takes out the risks because we are in an indoor controlled environment. We remove seasonality, we remove environmental risks of heat and humidity. We create a perfect growing environment for the plants and for the fish. And it allows us to generate 12 monthly harvests that we've now built what we call our carousel grow schedule, which is revolutionary in the industry, and that we have now for 52 consecutive weeks have delivered the same quality, the same quantity of produce for the largest grocery store in Puerto Rico, which is called Supermercado Econo. And that's something that they've never had before. So we can go into a lot of the details of the value proposition and the key differentiators, but the basics of aquaponics is fish are the nutrient source. The food that we feed them is the basis of all the macro and micronutrients that get into the system. And it's a closed loop, so we use less than 5% of the water of traditional farmers. And we have the added protein source that we do harvest the whole live fish when they get to about 8 months and about 2 to 2.5 pounds. So there is a protein component to this that in addition to the beautiful vegetables, fruits and vegetables, because that's one of the things that we're doing in this aquaponic system is we can grow any food that you want. It's just a question of, is it economically desirable? Is it needed in the marketplace? And can you achieve enough revenue to make it profitable? And we work through all those components in the system.
How did you come up with the idea of Fusion Farms?
So Fusion Farms as a name represents the fusion of traditional aquaponics, which has been around for 4,000 years. If you look at the Egyptians or the Mayans, it's been around for a long time. So it's not necessarily a new technology, but the fusion is really taking advantage of new ag tech solutions. So we have done something that's unique in aquaponics in that we've created vertical deep water grow troughs. So as you are probably familiar, water is very heavy. And so each gallon of water weighs 8.34 pounds. So when you're talking about pumping that water up to higher levels and sustaining that added weight, when you're dealing with, 15,000 gallons of water that you're moving up to a grow trough, 17 feet high in the air, that's an engineering feat that we have solved. And so we've created a proprietary solution for vertical ag tech aquaponics growing that is unique in the marketplace. So most aquaponics farmers around the world, again, this is not a new agricultural approach, but most of the aquaponics operators are single level ground mounted because of the weight issue. So we have created a much more efficient system by going vertical because we can get a lot more production out of the same square footprint. And so we created this primarily to deal with food security. So Puerto Rico was a good reference example of what it is to be an island nation that is isolated and completely dependent upon outside resources. So both in physical and a virtual sense, they are a food desert. So 95% of the food that's consumed on the island is imported. And that means there's many thousands of food miles that the food has to travel. So there's travel distance, there's time that it takes to get to those distances. And so that increases the probability of foodborne pathogens. It decreases the nutrient level in the foods. It creates shorter shelf life for the produce. And so part of our basic business plan is to address food security, which means these have to be hyper-local solutions. This is that we are conscientiously breaking the global ag supply chain, which is a dinosaur that doesn't realize it's extinct yet. But part of this is to re-energize the local farming solution, which is where we started. Whatever country you're from, wherever in the world you are, the agrarian societies that we were based upon were based on small farming, which is still to a large extent how Italy keeps their organic food supplies so pure, is because it's small farms that provide the local villages with the food that they need to survive. And that's a premise that we're going back to. We're saying you can have a highly efficient indoor vertical aquaponics farm that only needs to produce what the local community can consume, so that you're not shipping it or trucking it or putting it on airplanes or boats and moving it anywhere. It's consumed where it's grown, because the faster you can consume it, the higher the nutrient content is in that produce. So it's not only a freshness issue, but it's a nutrient issue. So my motivation was, look, my kids and grandkids are completely disconnected from their food sources. They have no idea where it's grown, how it's grown. So my mission in life at this stage is to give back, to do well by doing good. And part of that is educating my own family how to grow their own food. I mean, we're facing some really concerning economic impacts. And if you just look at the Ukraine-Russia war, it has highlighted what's going on with fertilizer supplies, the fact that it's, chemically generated urea fertilizer that is impacting traditional, conventional food supplies. It's a massive problem, and people are starting to recognize that they need to be capable of growing their own food, number one, and then knowing where their food sources come from and how it's grown from a nutrition and health standpoint, because everything we do is non-GMO. It's beyond organic. It is no pesticides, no herbicides. Everything is as Mother Nature intended it to grow, but without the risks of environmental, heat and humidity and things that I mentioned earlier.
Why did you choose Puerto Rico?
Puerto Rico is an interesting situation because it's actually an unincorporated territory of the United States. So it's bilingual. It has a bilingual population, about 3.5 million people. So it is large enough that it is statistically significant from an empirical evidence, market studies, evaluation of consumer buying patterns, creating a critical mass. It's essentially the same size as many states in the United States, but it doesn't have the typical restraints and government bureaucracies and all the challenges of dealing as a U.S. state. So there are specific tax advantages associated with being in Puerto Rico. If you structure it correctly, Puerto Rico is the only place in the world where you can maintain your U.S. citizenship and pay zero federal income taxes. So that certainly is a major fact for why people are moving to Puerto Rico. You've seen this mass exodus, certainly during COVID, where people have moved out of New York, New Jersey, the Northeast, moving to Puerto Rico because of those tax incentives. And it's a beautiful place to live, right? It's a tropical island. I'm a surfer, so there's fantastic surf there. If you love beaches and warm weather, I mean, it's a wonderful place to live, right? It's paradise from an island living standpoint. So it had all of those components, and it had probably the most extreme problems in terms of food security and food sovereignty, where we could actually quantify and measure the impact that we are going to be having in this type of structure. So there were no competitors, there were no people doing what we were doing on the island. And quite honestly, in addition to all the tax incentives, it was a really unique place where not a lot of the world is tracking what's going on in Puerto Rico except for hurricanes. Right. So from the standpoint of it is in the center of the Caribbean. And as this last hurricane season identified, from, June, July through November through now, there's the most recent hurricane that just went through Florida. The Caribbean as an area is subject to Hurricane Alley, right, which is annually these events occur. Now, Hurricane Maria 5 years ago was the biggest one that, probably is the most publicized, not for good reasons, but it really demonstrated the vulnerability that Puerto Rico has to these kind of catastrophic, natural occurring events. And so how do you create a solution when 84% of the farms on the island were destroyed? How do you create a solution to avoid that and create a hurricane protected indoor farming solution? And that's what we've done. So we could have done this literally anywhere in the world because, as the CDC has identified, there are over 6,000 food deserts in the US. And there are food deserts all over the world where people are looking for this kind of solution. So we literally could have thrown a dart on a map and probably hit a food desert where this kind of solution is required. So, we've signed contracts for new projects in Tennessee. We're in negotiations for a project in Reykjavik, Iceland. We're negotiating on projects in the Middle East. So there is a worldwide awakening about the need for, hyper-local farming. And the fact that even though aquaponics is more difficult to do than hydroponics, and that's one of the reasons that the majority of big dollars and big companies are focused on hydroponics, is because quite honestly, it's easier. But once you figure out and balance the aquaponics system, it is a much more cost-effective, long-term, lower operating costs, and it incorporates, natural fertilizer as opposed to chemical recipes that have to be added into the hydroponics. So we have a natural fertilizer ingredient, and it's much more, we believe, much more tasty and flavorful and beautiful. I mean, the colors and the flavors and the scents and the aromas coming out of an aquaponic system is remarkably different from any other growing system. Again, because it mirrors Mother Nature. And we give public tours every Saturday at Farm 1 in Mayaguez, Puerto Rico. And during those tours, we do taste testing. And there are people that have, even restaurant chefs, celebrity chefs that have come to experience our food. They taste it and they taste basil or they taste mint. And for the first time, they've tasted what Mother Nature intended that food to taste like. And they're amazed. They absolutely are shocked at how different the taste is. And probably our most unique crop is the strawberries. So we're growing strawberries in an island that cannot grow strawberries, right? It's virtually impossible in the heat and humidity of the Caribbean to grow strawberries. Well, in our perfect growing environment, we're growing strawberries that when people taste it for the first time and they bite into it, and if you look at a Driscoll's strawberry, or other strawberries that are picked unripe so that they can survive the transportation, they're picked white and then they are chemically colored when they arrive at their destination to have the red exterior. But if you cut into them, they have a white interior. Well, when customers on our public tour bite into our strawberries, it is blood red throughout, and the flavors are off the charts, and they've never experienced that before. So they've actually never tasted what a real strawberry should taste like, or what real mint should taste like, or what real basil should taste like. So there are significant differences in the quality of the crops and the of course the nutrients. So that's something that we spend a lot of time on, that we may want to drill into here, is the health impact of food as medicine and what it means to have truly full nutrient mix in our produce, which is not what you get at the grocery store today.
How many locations do you have?
Right now we have Farm 1 that is in operation. So we grow food, we sell food, and now we're into the third leg of the stool, which is building farms. So we are under contract for Farm 2, which is in Salinas, Puerto Rico, not Salinas, California, but Salinas, Puerto Rico. That will be farm number 2 on the island. We also have a signed contract for Farm 3, which is in Cumberland City, Tennessee. We're in negotiations for Farm 4, which will be in Memphis, Tennessee. And then we're in negotiations on Farm 5, which will be in Reykjavik, Iceland. And we have a large pipeline of other project opportunities that we're in ongoing negotiations with. So we're being very careful and very selective about how we expand so that we don't grow too quickly and don't get, outside of our capacity to supply and hire people, train people, grow the operations and keep the quality consistent, because we pay great attention to food safety. So food safety is absolutely paramount from our perspective. So we make sure that quality control is in place and that our biosecure environment, that all of our associates follow very strict food safety protocols. Everything that we do in the farm follows very much a franchise-like model in terms of standard operating procedures. So we have documented literally from the time an associate shows up at the farm in the morning and clocks in until they clock out at the end of the day. Every activity is under a standard operating procedure where we have written guidelines that they follow. We have quality supervision that reviews and makes sure all of those steps are being followed. That allows us to create a high degree of consistency and quality, and to make sure that we're not being subjected to any kind of, foodborne pathogens or introduction of anything that would, require recall of produce, which has been in the news a lot lately from other companies that are not paying attention to those kind of things.
Oh yeah, I've heard the cholera.
Yeah, that was
I've heard
really
the cholera recall.
Yeah. And look, I take no pleasure in talking about our competitors from a negative standpoint. I want them all to succeed because this industry is so important to the future of food production that I don't want any of our competitors to fail. And it really highlights that even with a company like Cholera that claims that they have the cleanest food in the world, for them to be, discover that they have this issue is a huge problem. And it really emphasizes that food safety is a day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute quality control issue. And Dole Foods had the same issue last year, right? Dole Foods had a cut salad processing facility, and it really boils down to they had an associate who was responsible for cleaning the cutting machine, has a standard operating procedure that cleaning machine was supposed to be cleaned and disinfected every day. And there's a quality supervisor who's supposed to review and make sure that associate did that cleaning as specified, and they would check off and make sure that machine was clean. Well, they missed it one day. The person responsible didn't clean and disinfect the machine. The supervisor didn't catch it. The next day, they processed salads that ended up infecting 1,200 consumers, and 2 of them died, unfortunately. Now, Dole is big enough to obviously survive that kind of catastrophic event, and nobody wants to see that happen in the industry. But it emphasizes that you have to be focused on quality control and food safety, which is why every day our employees review those criteria. They follow the SOPs. And I use the analogy, I used to be a private pilot. I don't fly anymore, but as a pilot, whether you're a beginning student pilot or a 40-year United Airlines veteran pilot, every pilot follows a pre-flight checklist. And that pre-flight checklist is designed to make sure that nothing's missed, that it's safety, right? And it's about the lives that you take into your hands when you put, 170 souls on board an airline. You're responsible for their safety. We take it as seriously as that. So our SOPs are our daily safety checklist to make sure that we're focused on food safety.
Mm-hmm. To get back to the Dole case, do you know if it was E. coli or something else?
I believe it was E. coli, yes. Because the most recent one from Clara, I believe, was Listeria. Yeah.
I think it was also E. coli.
Maybe the Dole one was Listerium, but yeah, there's a wide variety of bacteria possibilities, but they're all equally as potentially harmful. And again, it's just we want to avoid it at all costs. And so, one of the things when Panera Bread, if you recall a few years ago, Panera Bread had an E. coli outbreak. And they traced it back to lettuce that was grown in Salinas, California. And so there were thousands of food miles and many days, if not weeks, of time between when that crop was harvested in the field to the time that it ended up on the plates of the consumers. And so one of the things that they've identified is that the distance, right, the food miles is a major risk because it creates the time necessary for those bacterial colonies to expand and grow. And so if you can reduce those food miles, not only do you reduce the carbon footprint, you reduce the cost of the transportation, but you also shorten the life cycle that potentially bacteria can even thrive in that environment. So there's a whole variety of things that impact food safety. Food miles is one of them. The quality of the cold chain throughout that transportation process, making sure that you've got maintenance of the cold temperatures that are defined in the Food Safety Management Act, right? So the FSMA approach to making sure that you have quality control over the entire cold chain cycle until the consumer takes it home. Those are really important things that you have to pay attention to every bit of it and making sure that your vendor partners, when we hire a trucking company to transport to a produce distribution center, we have to make sure and check that they have a cold chain procedure to make sure that the temperatures in their refrigerated trucks are maintained at the level necessary to maintain that cold chain wherever that produce goes.
Now to pick up on your private pilot career, what did you do before Fusion Farms and how did it help to run this company?
That's a great question. And, what's interesting is I've had a lot of people say, well, where can I get my vertical farming degree? Well, there is no university in the world that offers that degree. So everything is really self-taught. So everything that we're doing is novel. And we've spent 4 years learning through the school of hard knocks, falling through the trapdoors of mistakes and learning and adjusting. But I did have, I was 30-year career in real estate, and the real estate development that I focused on was focused on a real estate investment trust that focused on building controlled environment facilities for the biotech industry. So back in the 90s, the biotech industry was an emerging market, much like vertical farming is an emerging market today. And so we built an entire financing structure, a publicly traded company. In 1993, we ended up taking the company public that today is a publicly traded New York Stock Exchange listed company under the symbol ARE. So Alexandria Real Estate Equities started as a private real estate investment trust back in the 90s. We aggregated a portfolio of biotech companies that had wet labs, pilot plants, CGMP facilities, positive air pressure medical containment facilities. So these facilities had all the electronic issues of LED lighting, air conditioning systems, humidity control, positive air pressure medical containment structures. So these are very complicated and very expensive facilities. And those, in fact, were the precursors to the emerging market of indoor medical cannabis. So medical cannabis became the next wave of indoor agriculture. And as a real estate investment trust, the same principles applied, where you had to create the air conditioning, the HVAC, the humidity control, the LED lights, the water, the piping, the plumbing. All of those elements are very expensive from a real estate standpoint. And so I had 30 years of developing those facilities all over the country, and then was an advisor and worked with another company that took the medical REIT public. And in that process, I really became, through a personal experience, became committed to understanding why the food in the grocery store lacks any significant nutrients. And so for me, there were personal motivations where I wanted to learn why our food supply is different today than it was 50 years ago. And so part of my career experience gave me the ability to understand the real estate components. And then also I've been, my first job in high school was driving a pea vine combine, harvesting peas. That was my summer job. So I grew up in an agricultural valley. I've had, exposure to agriculture my entire life, both as a hobbyist, a home gardener, growing our own food at home, through to now where I've turned it into a professional career of doing vertical farming from a personal passion. So a long way around to saying that, my experiences really gave me a solid foundation to understand the real estate components that traditional farmers don't have that experience, right? They're traditionally looking at either open field growing or greenhouse growing. And there have not really been significant advances in agriculture as a whole for 100 years, right? I mean, there's been the tractor and, chemical introductions to fertilizer that are not necessarily good, right? But as far as major technological advances for efficiency and effectiveness, what we're doing is leaps and bounds in terms of new ag tech, the yields that we're generating, the fact that we're generating, 52 weekly harvests. These are massive, and I don't use the word revolutionary lightly, but we are revolutionizing food manufacturing. And it can be the way that we supply food, for the world. Because if you look at the statistics, right, whether it's through the UN, the World Health Organization, or through Department of Agriculture's around the world, various ministries, they're all identifying that by 2050, the population of the world is going to be close to 10 billion, right? So it's 50% more people on the planet, and we're not growing more farmland. Farmland is being destroyed and built on and developed. So we're losing farmland every year. So the question is, if we need 50%, more population, and we have to feed 50% more people, and we're losing farmland, how are we going to feed the population of the world in 30 years, right? 30 years is not that far away. So you have to become more efficient horizontally, and you have to go vertical in order to create the efficient and effective food manufacturing solutions that can deal with the urbanization of the world, right? Our populations are going to be in major metropolitan settings, right? They're not going to be out in, farmland. That's not where populations are growing. And so the issue is, how do you get food into these major metropolitan areas efficiently and effectively, and with the nutrients and without traveling thousands of food miles? That's why we say, we are intentionally breaking the global ag supply chain, because it does not meet the needs of our future generations. I want my grandkids and great grandkids to be eating highly nutritious, very tasty produce that is grown within an hour's drive of where they live. That's a very different model than what big ag is promoting.
Yeah, as I was listening to you now, I couldn't agree more. This week or the last week, I did a sort of a mind exercise. If we could feed the whole Tokyo, because it's the biggest metropolitan area in the world with like 37 million people, if we could feed the whole Tokyo with just vertical farms, and I came to some conclusions that sure, it would be possible, but the energy, like the main hurdle now is energetics, because to
Absolutely.
operate a vertical farm and to grow all the produce for the current state of technologies is just too much to handle only vertical farms. But I think that for the future, this is like the way to go.
Yeah, and you've hit on a very important issue. And so when we talk about, we have a farm in a box solution that we have created unitized metrics for every piece of our operation. So why we are able to do this cost efficiently in a location is because we understand all the components, both the upfront one-time CapEx cost to install a farm, which is big dollars, and we can talk about that. But then there's also the ongoing operating costs, or the OpEx, that it requires to run the farm. When you're talking about, all of these levels of deep water culture grow troughs require LED lights. And those LED lights are advancing in technology. I mean, every month there's some new advancement that we're constantly aware of. So, we call ourselves food scientists because all of the inputs that are required to generate the food are things that we're constantly evaluating, constantly testing, constantly tweaking, which includes, we've dealt with 8 different light manufacturers. We've tested all of them. We've looked at the outputs and the outcomes. So everything from the light spectrum to the lumens, to the wattage, to the energy draw, to the heat dissipation, all of those components impact the OpEx costs. And so we've generated, which requires, again, air movement, air cooling, or in cold temperatures, air heating. So depending upon where you are in the world, you need to understand what are your power draws going to be and what is the power source for those locations. So as an example, in Puerto Rico, we, without solar or wind turbines, which are definitely lower cost, if you're reliant on the Puerto Rico Power Authority, right? PREPA. So it's the Puerto Rico Energy and Power Authority. PREPA is responsible for the power grid around the island. Now they're running predominantly, dirty diesel power production plants. Again, you can argue about the power source and the corruption in the government organization and so forth. But we're paying 32 cents a kilowatt hour for our energy. And we're making money at that, but it's super expensive. So the fact that we are in the process of negotiating to finalize our solar installation and our wind turbine installation, that will get our power cost down to 15 cents a kilowatt hour, which is cutting that power cost in half, which goes right to our bottom line. And so all of these factors impact the financial viability and the return on investment. And in order for the CapEx, the upfront cost, to be justified, we have to be able to show the OpEx revenues and the net operating income that can be generated from these operations. And we've been successful in doing that. So the opportunity to demonstrate through a facility. So Farm One, people can come to, they can take a public tour. We can do private tours for prospective investors. And we can demonstrate and walk through. I mean, we've been called the Disney of ag tech, right? So it's a really, really fascinating facility that, we could show you pictures, we could show you video, but until you actually physically walk into the facility and experience, what this actually is, it is a phenomenal experience that is unique in the world. And so we're excited about that. And the components of the complexity of the entire ecosystem for things like the power costs. So we have a memorandum of understanding with NREL, which is the National Renewable Energy Labs, which is a division of the Department of Energy. And they are working with us to create a comprehensive power production plan that includes some very novel power production solutions, including anaerobic digestive biomethanation, which is a digester that basically takes organic food waste, ferments it, and creates methane. And then we can scrub the methane to both liquid energy and CO2. And so that CO2 becomes part of what we need inside the grow room to create enough of the CO2 that the plants require in order for them to grow optimally. So there's some really interesting, so digestion is a very interesting solution. We're also looking at very closely at deep well geothermal. And that's one of the aspects in Iceland that's very interesting is they're already doing geothermal power production, which is very low cost. So their cost of power is, 3 cents a kilowatt hour. And if you go to places like in Tennessee, where we're dealing with, traditional coal-fired power production, that's 6 to 8 cents a kilowatt hour. So all of these factors come into play when you're evaluating the financial feasibility of an operation like this. And what's unique about our approach is that we've demonstrated the path to profitability. So just like, the solar industry, when it first started, people had to take a risk because nobody had ever built solar plants before. So early adopters, had all the risks of the unknown. But now there are massive investors that are funding solar projects all around the world because they know that the return on investment is there. The same thing in vertical farming. We've now demonstrated that there is a path to profitability, and that path can be justified based on our CapEx budgets, which are lower than competitors. So I think it's important to identify that we do not invest in robotics. We are not doing artificial intelligence that is very expensive technology and has not been proven yet. Some of our competitors have spent hundreds of millions of dollars on these technologies, which are now working, but they are, 10 years out before they will generate a return on investment because of that massive CapEx. And so we're looking at this from what we call a capital light perspective, is how little can we spend to get to the results that we know work. That's why we've been able to create this path to profitability, because we've been focused on the maximization of the lowest possible CapEx to get to a profitable farm. And that is how we believe that the future of vertical farming is going to be justified, is that investors are going to see, just like with the solar industry or any other emerging industry, that the operators that generate the profitable path are the ones that are going to get the investment. So we're not going to be the only ones. Obviously, this is a way bigger, market requirement and a way bigger, need for the world than we'll ever be able to accomplish. But we intend to be a market leader. We are a market leader. We intend to stay in that market position, and we intend to grow and continue to be the example that people point to, and that our competitors, try and knock off the pedestal. So that's a good thing. We love competition. The old saying is no competition, no market. So the fact that this is a huge, multi-trillion-dollar global market means that there's lots of opportunity for great ideas out there. And we're just excited to be one of the solutions that investors can look at, because our model is unique, and we're excited about making that available to prospective investors and local communities. So that's a good program from our standpoint.
So do you have any competition directly in Puerto Rico?
No, that's one of the things I said early on, that, Puerto Rico is isolated in the middle of the Caribbean. And so, the major U.S. competitors like Aero Farms and Plenty or Local Bounty or App Harvest, or Calera, right? None of those are even looking at Puerto Rico. So we are way off the radar screen. And so we are the only and first vertical aquaponics farm in Puerto Rico. And we believe we can expand here and gain a large share of the market before any competitors would even come to the island. I mean, there are so many challenges, and we say that the fact that we have survived and thrived in Puerto Rico means we can survive and thrive anywhere in the world. So for us, the entry into the continental U.S. Is a very strategic move, and we're selecting locations where we're not in competition with, Aero Farms or Bowery or, others like that, because we're a very different hyper-local business model compared to, App Harvest has 1 million square feet of greenhouse under roof in one location in Morehouse, Kentucky. They have a very different model than we have. They're growing, they're growing a single crop under 1 million square feet. They theorized when they started operations that they were going to grow 7 million pounds of tomatoes and ship it all over the U.S., right? It's the same old global ag supply chain market they're just cloaking themselves with all the benefits that CEA offers when in fact they're not really a CEA operator. So they're not hyper local. They are not supplying their local community with a wide variety of food. And that's another benefit of our aquaponics system, is that we can change the crop every 28 days and we can grow 100 different crops in the same system. So we can create a wide variety of crops to meet the local demand and not just supply 7 million pounds of tomatoes.
And so what crops and fish are you growing?
So the crops, we've grown over 100 different crops, right? So obviously we have, right now we're growing 12 different microgreens. We have 8 different varieties of lettuces. We have 4 different varieties of basil. We have bok choy, rainbow chard. We've grown all kinds of crops, including vining crops like tomatoes. We have outstanding rainbow cherry tomatoes. We've grown cucumbers, mini cucumbers. We've grown peppers. So we do the tricolored mini bell peppers. We've done eggplants. So a wide variety of crops. And so that gives us the flexibility to say, look, we can grow papaya trees in our system if we wanted to, but you can grow papaya trees in Puerto Rico in the heat and humidity, and they grow very well. Same with plantains. So those are crops that do grow in Puerto Rico that don't require a controlled environment facility. So we look at the market conditions and what the local conventional farmers can't grow, like strawberries. So we could have, one entire facility that we're negotiating with one of our grocery store off-takers for a dedicated facility to strawberries. And they believe they can take 30,000 pounds a month of strawberries in Puerto Rico and not even, saturate the market. So there's a huge demand, and we have a really unique opportunity to provide a wide variety of crops that we can do monocropping if the market demands it, like a strawberry facility. Or we can, like a local farmers market, we can be a local farmers market for a small community and provide a wide variety of crops of both leafy greens and, pollinating fruits and vegetables that require a different structure, which is part of our claim to fame, is that it's not normal for indoor growers to deal with pollinating fruits like strawberry. So we've solved that issue. We've actually been growing and selling strawberries for 3 years, we were the first indoor vertical farm to do strawberries. And now you can see all of the competitors are adding strawberries to their crop list, but it's not simple. It's a fairly complex structure when you think about pollination.
In general, the produce from modern farms such as yours is still a bit more expensive than the conventional produce. So how do your prices compare to other prices in Puerto Rico?
That's a great question. And part of our vision and model, we believe in equal access to affordable food, right? So we are not growing just for the high-end restaurants and tourists or wealthy customers or the high-end markets, in these rich areas. Our premise is that you have to be able to produce this food at a price where the average consumer in every market can afford to purchase it. So we actually are able to claim that we are at or below competitive market prices for equal produce. So we can deliver because we don't have the transport costs. We don't have, the additional costs of preservatives, things that are required when you're transporting food thousands of miles. So we're actually able to meet or beat the prices at the grocery store level, which means you can get higher quality food at the same and or lower prices. We could actually continue to lower prices at a time when, we've maintained our pricing for 3 years, even though inflation has continued to increase. And that's a huge issue on everybody's mind these days. The rate of inflation and the increase in costs of normal produce, whether it's eggs to meat to, lettuces, we are keeping the same price. We have not increased our prices through this, through COVID or through the normal inflation prices. Everybody else is increasing prices. We've kept them steady. We could actually show that we can demonstrate lower prices than the competition. So we're excited about the model because you can't just supply to a select elite group. You have to, from our perspective, to make this a globally adoptable solution, this has to be equal access to affordable food to every part of the community. And in Puerto Rico, we have, 60% of the population is on some type of government assistance. So when you go into the grocery store and you're looking at a finite budget, the perspective is, what's the maximum amount of volume that I can get for those dollars? Well, now we can add affordability to quality, right? Which is a very significant piece that not a lot of the competitors are focusing on. Affordable access to, to high quality foods. And that's a big part of our business model. We're looking at going into areas. So as an example, we're currently negotiating on our Farm 4 in Memphis is in a food desert where Memphis, this is a population area of 800,000 people. And yet you have Kroger that has pulled out of Memphis because they can't make enough money. Now, our objective is we're going to be in Memphis because the people of Memphis deserve to have equally accessible food at an affordable price. So they're currently a food desert and they have grocers that are pulling out. So that just, increases the food insecurity. And so having a Fusion Farms in their community, not only are we delivering affordable food that is highly nutritious and preferred, but we're also creating jobs in the local marketplace. So we hire locally, we grow and train local talent. We have local investors who are promoting this in the community. So we have a very unique model that is targeted towards communities that might otherwise be left behind.
That's a nice vision. And also the fact that you can actually have lower prices than your competition, even with this raging inflation. The latest hurricane in Puerto Rico was Fiona. And how did it affect the Puerto Rican food supply, and how are Fusion Farms addressing that?
That is a very current and recent example of exactly what we intended to do. So Fusion Farms, the day before Hurricane Fiona, the day of Hurricane Fiona, and the day after Hurricane Fiona, we were operating uninterrupted, without damage, without crop damage. We did go without power because power was out for 15 days, but we have a diesel generator, backup generator. So we were running and continued operation even through Hurricane Fiona. Now, it was a Category 1, so it wasn't as bad as Hurricane Maria 5 years ago, but it was substantial. It was catastrophic. It did, the estimates are hundreds of millions of dollars of agricultural damage, not including, the billions of property damage. So it was a catastrophic event, but we did exactly what we set out to do. So we had no crop loss. We were uninterrupted in our deliveries. The following Tuesday, so the hurricane was on Sunday, we harvested as normal on Tuesday and delivered to clients as normal on Wednesday. So, the intent of our business plan was proven out that you can create hurricane protected or any environmental challenge, right? So whether it's monsoons in the Philippines or typhoons in India, or severe drought in the sub-Saharan desert, or the freezing ice in Alaska, right? It doesn't matter what the environmental issue is. Our farm in a box solution can literally be planted in any location and be successful in whatever environmental challenge you're dealing with. And so it can remove those risks from the equation of farming, which is why hyperlocal is possible. You don't have to just grow in California because it has, the environmental optimal conventional farming environment. You can now do farming in any location in the world and create, hyperlocal, very nutritious, high quality food that is community oriented, with community jobs being created. using sustainable, renewable energy and sustainable farming strategies.
So you do like weekly deliveries, or
We do, yep.
what's your, so to say,
We harvest
business
every
model?
week and deliver every week. Yeah. Now we can deliver, or we can actually have, if they're large enough, we're actually negotiating for some of our off takers to actually have their trucks show up at our warehouse and take the deliveries into their own trucks so that they maintain their own cold chain of title from the immediate delivery off of our dock high loading docks. So we can do it either way. We're also exploring, right now we're in the evaluation period for doing a CSA, consumer subscription model. So there are community-based groups in very defined communities that have 150 to 500 families that want to sign up for a weekly box of produce. And so we can do that. And it's a very interesting model where we're working through all of the logistics of that, but it looks like a very attractive opportunity where essentially we can become a year-round farmers market to a local community that people can get their weekly box of fruits and vegetables from Fusion Farms and get it on a consistent basis every week, right? So that's a very interesting model that we're exploring as well.
Yeah, that's very nice. And how big is actually the facility, and how many crops or types of crops are you growing at a time?
Yeah, so Farm 1 is actually our smallest farm. It's 11,500 square feet, which is not small. I mean, that's a big warehouse, right? But Fusion Farm.
You mean the 11,000 square feet of just the floors, or the whole growing space?
Yeah, just the floor, just the footprint is 11,500 square feet. Now we have 5 levels of growing under that because we have a 17-foot high clear ceiling. So we have 5 grow levels in that facility. In the Salinas facility, that one's 75,000 square feet, and that'll actually have 9 levels of grow tops in that because it has 30-foot clear height. So it'll be a very large facility. And so in that one facility of 75,000 square feet, we're going to be able to produce the equivalent of 300 acres of conventional farming yield. And we do that every month.
That's a substantial number.
Yep. And so then in Cumberland City is 54,000 square feet. Memphis will be about 75,000 square feet. Reykjavik, Iceland will be 100,000 square feet. All of these are initial facilities with the opportunity to expand. So 75,000 square feet in Salinas, after a year or two of operation, could quickly expand to 150,000 square feet total. So there's lots of expansion opportunity. And so we're right sizing the facilities for the immediate short-term demand without, really stretching to look at, we're barely moving the needle in terms of the total volume of produce required on the island. Right now, the trade balance deficit, right? We're a negative import trade imbalance. It's $3.5 billion, right? Just the lettuce on the island is $100 million in total volume, right? So to put that in perspective, our Farm 1 can produce about 15,000 pounds a month of produce, which is not insignificant. But to put that in perspective, just the McDonald's franchise on the island. Now, I'm not a proponent of fast food per se. I'm just giving this as a reference point so you can kind of visualize in your mind's eye. The McDonald's franchise on the island on a monthly basis uses 90,000 pounds a month of iceberg lettuce. So if we converted and dedicated this facility to 15,000 pounds of iceberg lettuce, which we could do, we would only supply a fraction of what just the McDonald's franchise needs on the island. So that doesn't include all of the grocery store chains on the island. That doesn't include all of the 4,000 plus restaurants, all the hotels and convention centers. So the market demand is huge. And so we're barely scratching the surface. And that's why we're looking at part of our message is that we're looking to expand capacity and we need additional investment partners to help us accomplish that goal. So we talk with our teams all the time about the fact that this is a never-ending quest for capital, because as we continue to grow, we continue to need more and more capital to expand and grow these facilities.
And so now to the Black Panther. Who did first came up with the idea to actually collaborate on the movie?
So it was interesting that I got approached by a lady who has a history and a documented resume of doing documentaries as a filmmaker. And so she contacted me and said she was doing a documentary where she was going to be creating a set to simulate aquaponics for what was supposed to be a training program in Haiti. So that was the premise that she contacted her. And I said, yeah, we can absolutely do that. And so we went through the negotiations of, creating a set, having a real live working set, and what the cost would be and what the timing would be. And she said, well, we need you to sign a confidentiality agreement because we need to keep this quiet. And the working title of the movie that she gave me was called Summer Break. And I said, that's fine, no problem. We're happy to do that. And so she sent me the NDA, and the name of the company under the NDA was Marvel Studios. So I was like, okay, Marvel Studios, this is probably, Summer Break is not the real thing. So the next day, actually, they released that Summer Break was the code name for Black Panther 2 Wakanda Forever. And so we still are under confidentiality, so I can't reveal any of the storyline, but I can tell you that we are the special aquaponics advisor to the Black Panther movie. And we had a really exciting time back in April when they actually came to San Juan. We actually built a fully working aquaponics system with our tilapia and our plants. So there was actually live lettuces and basil and mint and other produce on the set. And so we were actually on the set working with the director and all of the staff. I mean, it's an amazing production when you think about a major blockbuster movie, the budget and the number of people. It's staggering, the complexity of producing a movie like that. But what's really interesting is, the fact that that this movie incorporates food security solutions as part of the theme in the movie, which is forward-thinking technology, which is a focus of, Wakanda. That focus is very timely given the current global economic concerns regarding energy prices, runaway inflation, diminishing supply, and increased cost of fertilizer. So it was really interesting to have them incorporate aquaponics as a new ag tech solution that even applies to forward-thinking, non-real nations of Wakanda. But we were excited to be part of that, and we got dubbed as the Tilapia Wranglers. So that was exciting that you'll see Fusion Farms in the credits, and you'll see our set, which is, Fusion Farms tilapia fish swimming around. It's supposed to be on a set in Haiti where the storyline is very interesting, and we're excited about the release that actually comes out at midnight tonight, but tomorrow is the official release date. So it was an exciting opportunity for us to be, and to our knowledge, we are the first vertical farmer to be featured and support a major theatrical release of a major blockbuster movie. So we're excited and honored to be a part of that, and we want everybody to go to the movie and watch it and look for Fusion Farms.
Yeah. Well, actually, I already saw the movie yesterday.
Oh, fantastic.
Because somehow in here in Germany, the release date was one day before the actual release day in the US. I don't know how that's even possible, but
That's
I
interesting.
really enjoyed the movie last night, and
So how was it? Did you like it?
and I have to say, yeah, I loved it. I actually shed a tear at the end.
Oh, wow. Excellent. So
Did you see it already, or?
I have not seen it, so I will see it tonight for the first time. And were you able to spot
Okay.
the tilapia in the movie? Did you see the scenes that we're talking about? Don't give away the storyline, but did you identify the tilapia in the set?
Yeah, well, actually, I didn't like identify tilapia. I've seen the set. I've seen the well, maybe yeah, but it was. I feel like there was more of an focus on the actual plants growing in the system than on the
Yeah.
fish.
Yep.
Like from the way the movie was cut.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, but I've seen fish also.
Oh, good. Good. Well, that's exciting. I'm glad you
Uh,
got to see it. Now my anticipation is even
yeah,
greater.
yeah. But you didn't actually even see the scene with your set in it.
No, we actually were
It
able
was
to.
kept confidential.
Yeah, we had to keep it under wraps. So even though we obviously had video
Uh huh.
footage of our own time on the set, they allowed us to take photographs of
Yeah.
our participation. But we have not seen the. We weren't involved in the premiere or anything like that. So we're just consumers like you, just showing up at the theater. So.
I have to say it was a nice system you've built for the set.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we're excited about it. So it'll be an interesting experience to see how that adds to the public awareness, because consumer adoption is key, right? And so if they see an actual aquaponics technology working in a blockbuster movie, people are going to have these aha moments where they go, "Wow, that's actually real, and we can actually get food from it." That just increases, the market awareness. It's good for everybody in the vertical farming industry, and we're just honored to, have been the chosen aquaponics operator, right? Because Marvel has unlimited resources. They could have gone anywhere in the world, picked any vertical farmer they wanted, and they chose us. So it was an exciting honor to be part of that, and we just wish them all the best for the success of the movie. It's projected to be, the biggest generating revenue of all time. So we'll see. It'll be fun to be part of.
When did they actually first contact you? Like, was it 5 years ago or 1 year ago?
Actually,
Or
right at the beginning of the year. So the beginning of this year in January, and then the actual shoot took place in April. And so it was one of the final scenes that was actually incorporated into the movie before they went into final production. So it was, relatively recent in the scheme of things, because they've been filming, that movie for a while, and they've been all over the world in various locations. And this was one of the final pieces that was filmed in San Juan. And so, yeah, the actual filming took place in April. And so the fact they got it into the movie and, edited and produced and put in, yeah, it was relatively recently. So yeah, it was good.
how long have you actually been working on the project?
For the movie or the project in general?
For the movie.
Yeah, we literally, the first time we were exposed to it was in January. And so we did all the design and the mock-up and the planning, the project plan and the budgets and all of that and the contract negotiations. That was all completed in March. So it was about a 3-month negotiation process. And then it was, a month to get all of the systems in place. But that really is a testament to, our farm in a box solution. So we can do, a home aquaponics system or a small farm or a large farm, because we have everything unitized. We're able to quickly deploy, which is, it's not a year-long process. So we were able to go into the facility where they had identified the set. We built the set there. Literally, it was, 2 days of shooting, but it was, months of planning. And so the facility was there, and we had representatives from PETA were on site, so that we were able to claim that, no tilapia were harmed in the filming of the movie. So that's an important thing. Yeah, so it was, a lot of planning, a lot of work, but a relatively short time frame. So rapid deployment was one of the reasons I think that they, worked with us, because they saw that we could, we had done this enough to be able to unitize it and deploy it very quickly.
And how was it working with Marvel on one of their most iconic movies, essentially?
It was fascinating because I was standing beside the director and the executive producer throughout the shooting of the scene, because we have, the tilapia. So fish breathe oxygen. They just breathe it as dissolved oxygen in the water. And so we have to pump air into the water to make sure the dissolved oxygen content is high enough to keep them surviving. And so there's air pumps that are noisy. Now, the dissolved oxygen content can stay, maintained for a period of time before it gets depleted. So when they would start shooting, just before they would say action, they would say tilapia wrangler, and I'd have to run on the set, turn off the pumps. The pumps weren't a noise in the background. So it was, it was a new experience for all of us. And it was exciting to be an integral part of, literally there was 150 people on the set. So they had the camera operators and the mic boom operators and the lighting operators and the script readers and the makeup artists and the graphic designers and the costume designers. And, all of this thing is a, highly crafted, meticulously planned solution. And so, we plugged right in. And so we worked with, the sound engineers where, they would say, okay, you can leave this part of it on because we want to see the bubbles, aerating the water, but, we don't want the sound of the pumps to interfere. So can you shut it off for this section? And so it was very interactive. It was exciting actually to, be part of the set and part of the crew. So it was a unique experience to say the least.
Did the movie production actually affect Fusion Farm's day-to-day operation?
No, not really. I mean, that again is part of, we have the grow operations and then we have farm development. So farm development is its own division that has, obviously they work hand in hand. So as we build out a new farm, farm development actually leads the exercise and is advanced in terms of, the construction design, the project planning, the timing and so forth. But very concurrent with that is the operating team. So as we look at hiring new people, that's done on a parallel basis with farm development. But it's really farm development operates, on a project by project independent basis. So it didn't affect the day-to-day operations of Farm 1, where we continued to operate, continued to harvest, continued to do the things because all the operating staff was continuing to, be there, and none of that operating staff was involved in the actual farm development of the set. So once the set was designed and built, it had a 2-day operating window where it was actually filmed, and then we, dismantled everything and took it apart and moved the fish back to the farm. So yeah, there was no interruption to ongoing operations, and that's, how we intend to expand and do additional farm development. It doesn't rely on, staff from the first farm, although we do have a train the trainer model where a lot of the experience, we actually will bring people from a new farm down to Puerto Rico and train them on site so that they actually see how it works. And so when they get to the startup operations, whether it's in Cumberland City or in Reykjavik, Iceland, they'll know how it works because they've been to the reference facility. They've been trained in an actual operating vertical farm. And so it won't be a completely foreign situation to them. And that's really part of what our, value add is to prospective partners. When you're talking about new farm development, we've worked out all those kinks and we remove the risk of development. So from a farm development standpoint, then it becomes, training the operators and getting the day-to-day operations on track.
So that's actually all for my questions. And I thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity, and just excited to, have an opportunity to introduce this to your audience, and appreciate the time you've invested, and look forward to, again, we're located at fusionfarms.ag. So on the web, we'd love to have you follow us on Facebook or Instagram. We would love to correspond with you. If you're interested in, partnering with us, you can send me an email directly at ceo@fusionfarms.ag. So thank you for the opportunity, and good luck with your show, and thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Adios.